This is The Last Laugh. I'm Matt Wilstein from The Daily Beast, and today I am so thrilled to welcome back on this podcast a multi-talented actor and writer you may know from comedy shows like Insecure and her Emmy-nominated dramatic performance on The White Lotus. Natasha Rothwell, welcome back to The Last Laugh. Thank you for having me. So great to have you here. Yeah, congrats on your second Emmy nomination for playing Belinda. Can you believe it?
Thank you. No, I'm so over the moon. It's completely unexpected, and I've been on cloud nine since I've heard.
As has been the case with this show, you guys get so many nominations that you're once again up against several of your own co-stars. Carrie Coon, Parker Posey, Aimee Lou Wood. You don't have Jennifer Coolidge to contend with this time. So are you feeling better about that?
Well, what's so funny is and it sounds so, I don't know, Pollyanna to say, but I've already won. Like I get to be in the White Lotus family. I have a nomination, and my peers think it worthy of nomination. I'm on cloud nine. So to me, I am quite competitive, but when it comes to these type of things, I'm just grateful and kind of just riding the wave of gratitude.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, this must all be gravy at this point because you were here, it was all the way back in the fall of 2021, I believe, right after The White Lotus season 1 aired. And we, at the very end of that conversation, I was looking back, we talked about it, and I was like, I know there was like rumors that Jennifer Coolidge was coming back. I was like, do you think you'd ever come back as Belinda? And you were like, oh, I don't know. Maybe if that's in the cards, but I don't think it is. So you felt like then at least you did not think that this was going to happen.
I said
this
goodbye.
Character was going to come back.
I said goodbye to Belinda. I was just like, yeah, what a great opportunity. And I saw it in my rearview mirror. And so when the opportunity came back again, I was so overjoyed. I was just like, what an amazing opportunity to resuscitate that character and storyline. And I said yes to the season 3 before reading the scripts, so I didn't even know what was in store for her. I just knew that I was excited to be back.
Did that feel risky? Like, were you waiting to see the scripts to be like, wait a minute, what did I just agree to?
Risky? No, because I trust Mike implicitly and he's a genius, but more so like, am I going to die? I was more like, am I saying like my enthusiasm to come back? I didn't know. I was just like, please don't let her meet a bitter end. But yeah, I was so thrilled to discover her journey.
Yeah, I feel like we'll get to how she ends the season in a little bit, which is very different from where she ended season 1.
Yeah.
How do you feel like this character is different when we meet her at the beginning of season 3 than she was when you left her? Do you feel like she has gone on a journey during that time, or how, what was it like to come play her again, at this point several years later?
Yeah, no, I definitely had to consider what has happened in the interim, and I feel like her relationship with Tanya and that experience, I think she experienced a bit of grief of losing a dream. And I do think she's culpable because she outsourced her happiness to someone else. And I think whenever you do that, it's a dangerous game because, you can only, trust yourself. And so I think she was sort of met head on with that idea, and that she has to figure out how to be in control of her own fate and not to outsource her happiness to someone else. How can she make herself happy? And I do think that's why she applied to this program, to go out of the country, to shake up her life and put herself in a different environment. I think that was all intentional on her part to try to discover for herself what makes her happy and also resuscitate her dream, of what the world has to offer. So I think a lot happened in that interim. I think when you grieve a loss of a dream, it's not easy. And so I think we see her, she's tender when we meet her again. She's optimistic. And I think that's why people root for her, because they can see themselves in the comeback story,
Yeah, I mean, it is a pretty sad ending for her at the end of season 1. So the fact that we see her coming back, taking this new adventure to Thailand, going outside of her comfort zone is encouraging for her character, and sort of, I felt excited that she was doing this. Did you feel that for her, that like, oh good, she's not broken the way she could have been after that.
Yeah, no, I think meeting her again, and I was reading the scripts, the word resilient kept coming to mind. I was just like, she's tough, she's a single mom. She's, trying to advance her career and to continue to grow as a person. I think that so many people are just satisfied with being stunted, but I think she's spiritual. She knows that there's more to life. And so I think to see her yearn to grow, it's a beautiful thing. And I think, I was so excited to see her light turned on. I think that her light was dimmed so acutely at the end of season 1. So to see it back on again, I think it lit me up reading it. I was like, okay, let's go.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to talk about where she ends up too, because you talk about her being tough, and she is really tougher than I think anyone thought she was by the end of that season. So we'll give the spoiler alert for anyone who happens to be listening to this. I mean, I hope that you've watched White Lotus by now, season 3. But this decision at the end to ultimately take the money and run, take the money and get out of there, was pretty controversial in some ways. Yeah. I will say your acting, both in the show and sort of the characters acting within the show, had me fooled. When she walked out of that negotiation, I was like, yeah, I believe it. And then of course we get the turn where it's all sort of a ruse and you're in on it. Is that true that was your idea to kind of have that twist or turn in that moment?
Well, I pitched Mike. I originally it was just Nicholas Davernay, my son Zion, who plays Zion. Yeah. They were in the negotiation themselves, and I talked to Mike, and we go through the pages together when we work together, which is what I love about him. And I was just like, I want to see her have some agency. I want to see her be culpable in her future. I think she outsourced so much of her power season 1 to Tanya, and I just don't want her not to exercise it this season. I think it could be a source of strength. And I pitched her running the negotiation. I was just like, maybe she's in charge. And Mike, was just like, no, I think there's something that we can do. Let me noodle. So he went back to the drawing board and came back with the scene. I was like, this is beyond what I could have even pitched, which is why he's Mike and I'm not. And I was so grateful because you get to see her in that moment play upon people's perception of her, that she's weak, that she's feeble, that she's, scared of Greg and scared of change. And we see that in that moment, she's actually in charge and she's manipulating and she can see his weakness. And one of my favorite days of shooting was the scene when I was on the couch just watching John do his thing, John who plays Greg / Gary. And, he did this thing with his eyebrows that sent a shiver down my spine, but it was also oh, he's folding. And I think that's when Belinda is on the couch and her wheels are turning. Okay, I know that he's scared that I have the power. And how often does a brown woman have power over a billionaire white man, Yeah. So I think for her, she's just I'm going to try to see if I can do this. And she activates and goes in the hallway. And yeah, it's one of my favorite moments of the show this season.
So the narrative around the end of the show with Belinda was that she's sort of become Tanya, this mini version of Tanya, and doing her love interest, Pornchai, dirty the way that Tanya did Belinda. And I know you've pushed back on this a little bit and gotten a little bit defensive of Belinda on that front. I've even seen people put the two scenes back to back online and sort of compare them. Too. So how do you respond to that? Because I know you don't feel like it's as cut and dry as this is a parallel of the end of season 1, right?
No, I think that also is the genius of Mike. It's an echo, right? So you can see the DNA of the dynamics that Belinda had with Tanya. And so, but I think Tanya promised Belinda the world and we're going to do this together. Yes, yes, and amen. And I think Belinda never gave that to Pornchai. She was like, I'll think about it. That could be cool. And it was in the hypothetical realm and nothing that was tangible. But I think that Pornchai took it as something that was tangible, that was just tantamount to a promise. And so, especially after them sleeping together, I think he was just oh, we're in it to win it. And I think Belinda was in this place of just following her heart and feeling she was just very in the moment. And Yeah, I can absolutely, like, I've seen the side by sides. I'm like, okay, I hear you. I understand that they are similar, but they're not identical. I think that they live in a space where you get to see someone handle the same situation with compassion. Because I think that, Belinda going to Porn Chai and was just like, circumstances have changed, and, it's not a no, but it's not right now. Like, I have to understand what this new chapter means. And yeah, it's so funny. People are just like, yeah, she should have taken this vacation fling on and gotten in the boat. And I was just like, you need to pull the comb through the hair and make sure that there's not any kinks, because that plan is not as smooth sailing as I think people think. But yeah, I understand it. I'll fight for her.
It goes back to the perception of who this person is as a character too. Like, even the fact that she takes the money,
I know,
I think people were uncomfortable with, because they think of her as this moral center of the show. Yeah, I mean, that was my question, is like, how did you have to figure that out for yourself, like be okay with that or find a way to understand her decision. Yeah. So was that hard for you?
Very much so. She's such a moral compass for the show. And I think in the Venn diagram of Belinda and myself, like, I fancy myself someone who's also pretty moral and does not want to invite that karmic retribution into my life. But I also think that you find her in a place where she's justified it mentally, in that, like, this is something that was promised to her, but also it is someone offering relief to a lifetime of, like, struggle. And I remember I was talking about this with, it might have been Aimee Lou or someone on cast, where it was just like, I just remember in my 20s in New York where I was so broke. I'm like picking up Metro cards off the ground, hoping one of them had enough to get me home from a comedy show, and thinking, oh, there'll never be a point in my life where I'm not thinking about money, where I'm not thinking about how to pay the bill, where I'm not thinking about, like, how to pay the rent. And to give someone in that position that kind of breath of fresh air, I think it's sort of, it's hard for her to reconcile saying no to that freedom. She deserves it. She thinks about, the sort of like emotional tax that she's paid just by existing as a Black woman in America and working in a subservient position in a mostly white homogenous environment with people who have triple, quadruple the times of, money she has. It's one of those things where it's just like, fuck the morality. Like, I deserve to have this break. And so I'm worried about her, if I'm being honest, because I do think that there is some sort of more like karmic retribution that it's bad money. You know what I mean? Like, it's blood money. So I don't know what the, future seasons hold. I don't even truly, don't know what's going to happen with Belinda in the series, but you worry about someone that tastes the forbidden fruit. She dives into the deep end with everyone else. And, I like that we get to see her break bad a little bit. She's human after all.
Yeah, that final shot that we see of her, she's, going off on the yacht and into her new life. We don't know if she will return once again. I mean, I don't know if I don't think
I truly don't. I don't want to know.
That Zion could be in a future season, which then makes me think that maybe Belinda could be in a future season. What would you want to see for her if you did come back once again, whether it's the next season or maybe in 2 seasons or down the line?
I mean, I think that she's the type of woman that, given the origins of her newfound wealth, I think she will feel compelled to do good with it. So I think that I don't think it's necessarily a spa treatment center. I think that was the kind of dream she had to have because it was maybe practical, like, I'll start a business and make money. And I think when you have the latitude of impractical dreams because of money, who knows what she's done, but I do think she's done something good with it. And I do think that there's this unresolved justice with Tanya. And I think that Belinda's the strongest tie to Tanya. And I don't know if there's an opportunity for her to bring justice to that. yeah, I hope it's something good. I hope it's something good.
Yeah.
And I hope that, yeah, she can help bring justice to that situation, perhaps.
I'm not suggesting that you've ever taken blood money in your career, but you did say that when you were, starting out, you were like, I can't imagine ever, not thinking about money. Was there some decision or some moment in your career that made it so that you could get over that hump, maybe the way that Belinda is now?
Yeah, no. When I got SNL, that was like my first real steady paycheck from anywhere that was for my craft, and I chipped away at my college debt. I didn't even, and because I was scraping by so barely when I was in New York, I am very sort of frugal, because it's like, you don't know, there's this, this mindset of lack, that can be ingrained in your brain when you haven't had a lot. And yeah, I just remember getting my first couple of paychecks from SNL, and, some of my counterparts were like doing more fun things. And I was just like, no, I'm paying down my student loans and getting some
imagine that, as a first year writer on SNL, I don't think those are huge paychecks either.
No, not at all. They were just getting me out of, I was digging myself out of a massive hole. And so, but it did give me the exhale of like, oh, I know my rent is going to be paid next month. And it's not kind of like a catch where catch can.
Yeah, I was curious, as someone who got their first big break writing for SNL, what you thought of the White Lotus SNL sketch that got quite a lot of attention when it aired this past season.
Yeah, no, it's so fascinating because I've seen how the sausage is made, and I think that there's some care and attention that could have been paid to Aimee Lou's portrayal. Also, just knowing her heart is just so big, and she wears it on her sleeve. And so I feel a little protective of her. But overall, I think it's just like everything's in jest there, but it's intent versus, the effect, right? If just like it may have been intended to be lighthearted, but some people maybe got in their feelings about it. But yeah, I mean, I chuckled. I was just like, okay, let's go. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the concept of the sketch was really going after Trump and MAGA and all of those people and using White Lotus as a vehicle for that. But then I think when they came to Aimee Lou's character, that piece was maybe missing a little bit or something. And there wasn't like a clear satirical target there.
Yeah, it was a complicated execution, to be sure. Like, it's a complicated show, and then to add the politics on top of it. Yeah, it was a hard needle to thread, and so I can see how that.
And of course, you got to watch Lizzo portray a version of Belinda. So what did you think about that?
I wanted her to have more. I was just like,
it was a little quick.
It was so quick. I was just like, oh my God, I want to see what she does more. So, I think it was a very full circle moment to have been on a show, and then 10 years later, be like having a cast member play me on the show. Life is wild, man.
Yeah. The cultural impact of this show, White Lotus, is just enormous, and even more so than when you were on the first season. What has that been like for you? I mean, people are sort of like bizarrely fascinated with on-set drama between the actors that may or may not exist, and sort of feels that a lot of that stuff to me feels kind of invented.
Truly invented.
And I don't know, how is it to be, part of that cast, part of that world, and then, I guess weeks, months, whatever go by, and now people are consuming it and taking it in and talking about it. Because I'm sure you've been in some big stuff, but this is sort of another level of fan interaction and people obsessing, writing, all of that stuff. So what has that been like for you?
I mean, it's so major, just compared to season one, and it's like you said, the fandom is intense, and people want to know what's going on in our lives, and who hates who, and I hate to disappoint people because I'm just like, no, we really did all get along. Like it's invented. Like people are taking, photos and, extrapolating all of these theories where I'm just like, we're just people who went and got to be in this cool production and made something that you like. Can't it just be that? And they're like, no, we need the drama.
People want it to be a reality show, I think, or something. It's like,
people want that.
Yeah.
They want the soap. They want it to feel as soapy as Mike writes. But I'm just like, no, it's not that way. Carrie Coon told me about a really good, bug spray, and like Walton and I chopped it up over some brown liquor and laughed. And so it's just like there's no drama. But I think that what I love about the White Lotus fans and what I loved about season 1, like it is this kind of fantasy people can project onto and escape into. And I think that we're kind of all symbols of that power of being able to escape and run. And so people who come up to me and I love it because luckily I don't play a character people hate. So they're just like, oh my God, I'm so excited for you. And being on a plane and having a steward bring over a napkin with just I love Belinda on it. And if I stay at a hotel, I mean, it's the staff that recognizes me more than anything, which is just the joy. They just feel so seen. They're like, thank you for, showing this part of, hospitality. And so it's been a joy, but the drama is so, don't trust it. I wish I could tell the fans of the show more of just it's really dirty, but it's not.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think Jason Isaacs fueled that a little bit by alluding to, something, and then that's really what took off. And
Jason, he's so funny, and he's so very British. I think also it's just the how do I say this? It's people can work together and be professional and get along, but it doesn't mean that we're going to be in each other's Christmas card, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think his way of expressing that is just not everything was, I forget what the quote was, but in my mind, I'm I remember reading it too and being like, Jace, man, people are going to take this and run.
Opening up a can of worms.
Yeah, he's so sarcastic and dry. I'm like,
this is a huge moment in your career, this third season coming out, the Emmy nomination, everything. And then, of course, at the same time, you're finding out that your own show that you created and starred in, How to Die Alone, won't be coming back.
Yeah.
I think that news came around February, sort of right when a lot of the, Trump had just come back into office and a lot of this move away from anything that has anything to do with diversity, equity, inclusion, and all that. And I was curious if you felt like there was any connection there. Did it feel like part of this larger pattern that these big corporations are kind of moving away from content that could be perceived in that way?
Yeah, I think that. And first of all, thank you for asking about the show. Sometimes I think interviewers are tentative to bring it up because it's canceled, but I love talking about it because I love the show. I mean,
it's clearly such a personal project for you. I mean, I really enjoyed watching it. And
thank you.
So how did you take that news in? Because I know it was disappointing.
Yeah, it was definitely disappointing. I think it got such rave reviews, and we got the Spirit Award nomination, a lot of NAACP noms as well. And it came at a surprise. And I think it was also surprising because the show was a part of the Onyx Collective, and which is meant to sort of uplift Black talent or diverse talent. And I don't know if correlation is causation, but I think that if I step back from, my personal skin in the game, I can't help but honor what I'm seeing, which is a lot of shows of color going by the wayside, and investment in those creators also going by the wayside. And I think while I have struggled to understand why my show was on the chopping block, I think I'm in good company of other creators who have amazing shows that have not been given the opportunity to prove themselves. They use that term all the time, prove themselves in a season 2, like being able to take the story even further. And yeah, it's hard to see, but I think one of the benefits of being a multi-hyphen is I can continue to create work for myself and for others that reflect my experience. And I'll continue to do so in spite of mandates and, institutions perhaps pulling away their commitment to that as well. But I'm nothing if not direct, and I hold executives accountable when I talk to them about, what they've committed to. And even if the system at large has, taken off their official commitment to it, I ask them, are you interested in this conversation? And by and large, they have been. I think they've been taken aback by my directness, but I think we have to have direct, intentional conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion in front of and behind the camera. It just makes for better television.
Do you feel like executives will pay lip service to your face and then maybe not deliver on the back end? Or have you found that how has that gone for you?
I mean, it's Hollywood, of course, though.
Yeah.
I think there's
that was kind of an obvious question.
I mean, of course, when confronted by someone who's also talent, because I think that also is, they're trying to maintain that relationship. But that's not going to stop me from asking the questions. And even if it is lip service, I think it's allowing people to have conversations around those decisions. And it's also alerting them to the fact that while the institutions at large may have taken away official support, I will continue to advocate for that. Like, it's not going away, and our stories aren't going away, and your need for our stories aren't going away. And so I think we have a long way to go, but I'm excited to continue to hold them accountable and continue to push for stories that I think we all deserve to see.
Even as shows get canceled, there is this new trend in entertainment too, where it feels like nothing ever goes away for good. Like anything can come back. Do you feel like is How to Die Alone still something that you would try to bring back, are trying to bring somewhere else, or is that not a possibility? Or
I'm open to anything. I definitely did the rounds of, trying to see if we could set it up someplace else, and all those versions would have been sort of diluting the potency of the show that I created and the power of it. And I would never want to do the cast or the writers a disservice by sort of offering them a more diluted version of the quality show we created. But yeah, I think, I'm older, so My So-Called Life was one of my favorite shows coming up, and it was one season.
Yeah, me too.
And it's excellent, right? Jordan Catalano, Angela Chase, give it to me. And I still talk about it, right? And so like there's power in having something really amazing see the light of day and affect people in a way that it'll stick with them, that, however many years ago that was, they're still talking about it. And so that to me is the victory. Like my DMs are flooded with people who are now finding the show because of White Lotus, right? They see, oh, Belinda's in something else, and they'll go watch it and they'll be like, oh my God, this is, we love this. And so that to me is just like these glimmers that that just bring me so much joy. And in the future, if the opportunity comes around where I can again make the show with the same integrity that I made it the first time, I'd absolutely jump on the chance to play Mel again.
It does feel like White Lotus has elevated the careers of anyone who's in it. Like it makes you more seen and probably brings opportunities. Do you feel that? Are there things that it's allowed you to do or get the opportunity to do that you think you couldn't have before?
I don't know. I don't know if I can suss out the cause and effect. I think it's a net positive, to be sure. But yeah, I think that it's still, it remains to be seen. I'm kind of in it right now. I feel like ask me this question a year from now and I can tell you sort of like what impact it's had. It's so fresh, but again, it's a great club to be in. And I feel so fortunate to have gotten in on the ground floor. I was joking with another interview I was in. I was just like, I don't know if I would have been cast in this, this time around. The first time I didn't even audition. I just got on I was just like, my agent was just like, do you want to talk to Mike? I got on a Zoom with him. He's like, do you want to play Belinda? And I was like, yeah, send me the scripts. And so it was one of those things where now people are, you have the likes of, Jason Isaacs putting himself on tape, it's like it's major. So yeah, I think my feet are firmly planted on the ground because of my entry point into the franchise. And now I'm just kind of, for the first time, experiencing the phenomenon that is the show. And so we'll see.
I remember the last time you were on the show, we talked at length about your sort of complicated history at SNL, auditioning as part of this big search to add women of color to the cast. And then, you didn't get cast, but you ended up writing for one season. To me, I don't want to jinx anything, but I feel like you are now at that level where you could be someone who didn't get cast but ends up hosting the show. I'm thinking of, there's a long list. It's people like Keegan-Michael Key has talked about it. Kevin Hart, Kumail Nanjiani, a lot of people. But is that something that you think about? Is that on your bucket list? Because, you said it was surreal to get portrayed for, about 20 seconds by Lizzo on the show. But is that something you could imagine for yourself, hosting?
Yeah, I definitely, it's so funny because I think I mentioned this to you the last time we talked, like, SNL was never my crosshairs as like goals.
You said it wasn't your dream.
No, because I didn't see myself reflected in the show. I enjoyed it, but it was never sort of that. And I think with the writing and being on the show, being in the rear view, this is another one of those opportunities at SNL that it's like, it's not necessarily my crosshairs, but if it came, I'd jump on it. I love sketch comedy. I cut my teeth in improv and sketch comedy. And, I was at an event with Taran Killam and Jay Farrow recently, and I was just like, they're great guys. Like, they're great. They're not on the show anymore, but it's just like, we're all the same brand of neurospicy. We like putting on wigs and costumes and making people laugh. So yeah, I'd absolutely say yes to it if the opportunity happens to, come.
How do you think you would approach it? You'd be going back to this place where you were a writer. I don't know, because you got to see these huge hosts come through and work with them and pitch them. So what do you think it would be like to be on the other side of that?
I don't know. I think it'd be it would be surreal. It's like going back to a place that, has all sorts of memories, good, bad, and indifferent. And I always, and again, this might sound Pollyanna, but if I try to move in a way where if I were in the person's position that I'm engaging with, that I would want to be treated that way. And so I think, I even think about the season I was there, the SNL interns all they were like, we're voting you our favorite, because I would just hang out with them. You know what I mean? So I don't think any of that would change. That's just in my nature to be like, who in this space is not, being seen? How can I see them? And that's just how I move. So I think it'd be the same way. I'd be like, hey, what are the interns up to? What do you want to see me do? I want to chat with the writers and, have fun. At the end of the day, it's fun. And I think my time there, it's stressful because I was a freshman, there. So I think being able to go back and be like, how do I have fun with this? Now that I'm in a seat of control or somewhat seeming control.
Anything that a host did while you were there that you would try to avoid?
Ooh, you're trying to get dirt. I'm not Jason.
Yeah, Jason would tell me.
Jason would absolutely tell you. No, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I have never been more in my head than when I work there. So it's almost like I don't even know if I can. I set up camp in my head. It was just you were just trying to make sense of a game and didn't know the rules. And so I don't even know if I would hold any of the hosts accountable for any perceived behavior because I was so in my head. But I'm just trying to think. I mean, some of them weren't, they're very quick because you have to understand that their handlers are taking them office to office to get these pitches, and you can see that they're just preoccupied because they're about to do the biggest gig of their life, right? And so I think, there were maybe one or two that were just didn't see me, but I don't fault them because I didn't see them either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, everyone was in their head.
Everybody. It can be a crazy making place in that way.
So now it's time for our segment called The First Laugh. Since you've been on before, I'm going to try to ask you some different questions than I did last time, but this is like our speed round. So starting with, is there something that you would tell yourself when you were starting out in comedy that you wish you had known that you know now? Write.
Like, call yourself a writer. I didn't call myself a writer until I saw my name on the credits at SNL and it said writer above it. I'm not kidding. I was just like, I guess I can call myself that because I didn't go to school for it, so I didn't think I had the right. But I was writing way before that. So yeah, call yourself a writer.
Speaking of SNL, was there a first sketch that you wrote that got on that you remember, sort of being proud of that you got something on the show?
Yeah, I did Taraji P. Henson's monologue, and she did this big gospel number called I Made It. And I don't think it would have made the air if it wasn't for her performance at the table read, because it was like one of those things where it's just like, you got to sell it. And, I'm a freshman writer attempting to do a monologue joke or monologue set. And I was like, there's no way this is going to see the light of day. And she just sold it. And I just remember being like, I saw the list. I was like, she's doing it. Like, she's got it. And it was just such an amazing sort of moment of triumph.
Did you have a most surreal moment at SNL when you were there, interacting with a celebrity or someone that you just couldn't believe that you were in the same room as, or anything like that comes to mind?
Almost too many to count. Like, it's just like you're in this fever dream. I remember, the writers would come down to the music dress rehearsal sometimes to get a preview. And I remember we snuck down to watch Prince do his set. And I'm just like, what the fuck is my life that I'm like running down on my lunch break to watch Prince shred? And like, this is like, it was nuts. And there was this one moment I had with Chris Rock that was just, I had written this sketch for Sashir where she's doing, I forget the name of it, where she's doing like a YouTube channel type thing, and he's the father and coming in and sort of chastising her. And I gave him a note on one of the lines, and as all the writers do, because you're producing your own thing, so you go in and you're like, oh, if you read it this way, this will land. And I remember I gave him the note and I started walking away, and he was like, hey. And I turned around and he was like, smiled in a wink. He was like, you just gave Chris Rock a note. And I was like, and it was so funny because I think he could sense my abject fear of giving Chris Rock a comedy note. And I was like, so like hand shaking, pencil shaking, pointing to the script, like, could you say this way? And he just played around with me, and I just let out the biggest laugh, and he laughed too. And I was like, oh, that was like, he didn't have to see me in that moment. And he did. That was really sweet.
Yeah, very self-aware, too, of how he's perceived.
He knows his effect on, comedy people. So, yeah.
I feel like Insecure was the first thing that you were really recognized for a lot, because you were obviously on screen so much and a big part of that show. Do you remember the first time you got like recognized out in the world as Kelly from Insecure, and what that experience was like?
I don't know if this was the first time, but it was the one that like took me by surprise. I was like coming out of the grocery store parking lot, and I was walking to my car, and I had groceries, and someone was coming up to me. And hardwired, if anyone speaks to me in public, I'm like, what do you need? Are you in trouble? Am I in trouble? What? Like, I had I was not even thinking they were coming over because they recognized me. I'm like, are you in trouble, ma'am? Or like, whatever. And this young girl, she was just like, are you Kelly from Insecure? And I was like, groceries in hand. I'm like, yeah. And I looked confused, and she's like, oh, I love you so much. And she just like left. And I remember just standing in the parking lot like that was so cool, but also like I don't know if I'm prepared for for living my life as normal without someone knowing what's in my grocery cart.
So you'll be back at the Emmys this fall for the White Lotus. I'm curious about your first Emmys experience. What was the first time you attended the show, and what stands out in your memory from it?
My first time was the last time. This will be my second time. I just remember being on the carpet, and I just couldn't believe I was there. I just genuinely couldn't. I'm just like, this is it. I would be home right now watching this.
Yeah,
like,
and as a nominee, no less.
No less. And I just remember just like seeing stars, and it was also just because when we set out to do the show, like we didn't know how much people would love the first season, so it was like major celebrities like recognizing me on the carpet and me disbelieving it like actively to their face. Like, are you serious? Like, one of the biggest moments, it was the evening before party. So before the Emmys, they always have this party, and it's called the evening before. And they have this small step and repeat because cameras aren't inside. And I was just taking one for like my memory, and I hear a voice being like, Belinda, and it's John Legend. And he comes over, and I just remember just like holding his arm, and he had just EGOT it, right? He had just done Jesus Christ Superstar. I was like, you have an EGOT. And he's like, I love you and, White Lotus. I was like, you have an I just kept saying that over and over again because I couldn't believe, one, he knew who I was, and let alone was like saying, like walked up to me on purpose. So yeah, it was just like that for the whole weekend of just like being like I felt like I snuck into the cool party and just like laughed it up with my publicist, and my manager was my date. And I was just like, it was just, it felt like a wild ride. And I imagine it's going to be the same this time around. Like, I'm still me. I'm still in shock that I get to do this for a living.
More at home at the Emmys this time?
I'll feel at home because I have anxiety, and I have social anxiety pretty bad, if you can believe it. And so a familiar place is always easier on my nerves, even though I'll still be nervous. So I'm just glad that I'm like, at least I've done it once, so I don't have to be scared about the process, but it's more just like, yeah, I'm just like a theater nerdy like girl who like worked at Blockbuster growing up, who loves actors and Hollywood. And so to be in that space that I've watched the Emmys religiously my whole life. The Emmys and the Oscars was always like my appointment viewing. And so to be a part of it that's why I say like I would love to win. Like I don't want to bury the lead, but like I've won. Like I'm at the party, I feel good about that.
People may or may not know that just about every day for the last many years, you have tweeted the words "you are trash" at Donald Trump. What was the first time that you did that, and what compelled you to post that and then continue to post it every day?
Yeah. It was 2016, and I just remember the utter confusion of the election results and sitting with this dis-ease about like life and the state of our country and government, and wanting a place to put that anger. And it was a month or two after the elections, so maybe January before he got inaugurated. And I was just like, that motherfucker's online. Like, I can just tell him to my face what I think of him. And I did it one day, and it felt so good. It felt like, a release valve of that like pressure inside. And I was like, I'm just going to do this until I stop feeling this way. And so I did it every day of his first term. And I've started up again. I took a break during the Biden years, and now I'm back. And for me, it's not a bit where I'm like, oh, I think this is so funny. It's almost like this meditative like reminder that this is not normal. Like this is not okay, and this is not normal. And I don't have a robot tweeting it for me. I tweet it myself. It's irregular times of the day because literally it's like I read the news and it dawns on me he's trash. Let me text him. Like it's like, and it inevitably every day there's a moment in which I'm like, he's trash. He needs to be reminded today. I need to let him know.
The last question that we ask on the show is there a story or memory from your career that makes you laugh now, but really was not funny when it happened?
Ooh. That makes me laugh now, but wasn't funny when it happened. Ooh, that's a great question. Can it be from does it have, well...
It doesn't have to be from your career, but...
I mean, it's from my career if you consider high school theater my career.
Sure. That's the beginning of your career.
Yeah, that's pretty much. Oh my God. Okay, so I was auditioning for one of the school musicals and did not have confidence in my singing ability. So I decided to learn the sign language to the song I was auditioning with. And when I auditioned, thinking I would distract them with my, very inclusive audition, I blanked on the sign, from the first sign, but my hands were in the air and moving around. So I committed and did what can be called an interpretive dance to my audition song for the Music Man. So I just remember leaving the audition weeping because I had just I just knew the panic was on my face and it wasn't and I was just so devastated. But I look back and I think it's moments like that. I nowadays it's so uncool to be cringe and it's uncool to care, right? Caring is cringe. And I care so much about what we do that I was I don't want to disappoint, my theater teacher, Mandy O'Neill, shout out to her at the time. And I was I just want to make her proud. And so it was just that devastation. But I laugh at, I laugh a little bit at the earnestness of that moment and just how deeply unserious it was. But at the time, it was everything, I have to get on the Music Man. But yeah.
And did you get the part?
I made it into the show, but I did not get the part that I wanted. I played the Music Man's mom, who I think had a line. So, shout out to Mandy O'Neill for seeing me, but it's okay to be cringe. It's okay to care. And I did, but I can't help but laugh at that girl who did some very weird interpretive dance during her audition.
Well, I think caring has served you well so far. So
thank you.
Thank you for doing this again. And I'm such a big fan of your work. And good luck at the Emmys and with everything else. And I hope we get to talk again sometime.
Yeah, same. Thank you so much.